Hey guys, welcome to That Florida Feeling. How are y'all this week? I hope everybody's doing good and enjoying fall in Florida, or rain in Florida, or the hurricane in Florida, but that's Florida. It is really weird though that we got a November hurricane. It's wild. They usually don't hit that late. But thank goodness we're probably, 20 days out of hurricane season, and this will be the last one. And I know that just like y'all, I'm ready for this season to be over with. Thanks to everybody who's liked, followed, commented, shared, or interacted with the Facebook group page, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You guys are awesome and amazing, and thank you so much. If you have a second, I really would appreciate a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple. It just helps get the podcast out there to other people, and they can find out how awesome this podcast is. So thank you. I'm also glad to know that pumpkin pie is the main pie that everybody wants at Thanksgiving. I know that that's my pecan and pumpkin are my top two, and then chocolate. Somebody did put mince meat. I was surprised to see that. I think it was Ernie. I haven't seen that in a long time, and my dad used to eat those all the time, and I'd honestly forgotten about it until you put it out there. So thank you for that interesting reminder. I tried it once. It was not bad. It just wasn't for me. So today I want to talk about something that I find really interesting. I love going to museums. I think that there's so many cool different kinds of museums. You can literally go to a museum and learn about anything and everything. So today I want to introduce you to a couple of museums in Florida. I know that most people just think Florida is all about sunshine, beaches, and theme parks. But when the weather doesn't cooperate, or it's that time for the regularly scheduled afternoon shower and you just need that 30 minutes to do something else, that 30 minutes can turn into 2 hours in a really cool museum. And there's a lot of fun things to see and do. Also, Florida has a lot of really cool outdoor museums. I know you're like, that's a state park. Yeah, but not really. And I'm going to introduce you actually to one of those really cool outdoor museums. And it's home to many different kinds. A lot of them are actually hidden gems. So today I'm going to introduce you to a few. Some have been recommended to me, some I've been to. And of course, like everything else, there's so many of everything in Florida. This will probably be a part one of a couple. So the first one I want to talk about is the Tallahassee Auto Museum. And this museum is really cool. It's actually, it's bigger than I thought it was. And it's got some really cool one-of-kind cars. And it's a fairly new museum. It's only been around since 1996. DeVoe Moore was the founder of the museum, and the museum was born out of developing a facility to house his collection of 15 automobiles. And DeVoe regarded automobiles as a work of art, and he decided that he wanted to make a museum for people to be able to share his love of these cars. He wanted to show them off. He wanted to teach people about them. And out of that, this museum was born. And the museum actually was eventually made a nonprofit, like it is today, and it was a way to educate people. So all the fees and donations, even today, are still used to upkeep the museum, keep it running, and preserve all the history in the museum. The collection in the museum is completely private donated. These people did not go out and buy anything in this collection, and it is a massive collection. The museum actually grew so much that it had to move in 2007. So in 2007, it moved to its current facility. Its current facility is kind of outside Tallahassee, right off I-10. The museum now is about 100,000 square feet, and it has 2 stories full of cars, mostly American cars, but it also has a really cool collection of Americana. The museum actually has 160 automobiles, and this collection includes a 1900 Snell, a 2010 Camaro that was customized to look like a Pontiac Trans Am, and it's actually really cool to look at. An 1860 horse-drawn funeral hearse that was reported to have carried Abraham Lincoln at once, as well as several Batmobiles. The Batmobiles come from Batman Returns and Batman Forever. That's just 2 of them. It's a really cool collection, you guys. The museum also houses a large collection of United States case knives, outboard motors that date from 1908, fishing lures, even adding machines dating from 1894. It has a large collection of Native American artifacts, sports memorabilia, and a really interesting collection of Steinway pianos. It's a really interesting museum. I wasn't expecting that kind of mixture of collections because, you just think it's cars. But it's actually really interesting. And the collection of pianos actually includes the Peace piano, I am going to say this wrong, Chihuly. I want to call it Cthulhu, but it's Chihuly. Chihuly art piano, and the 500,000th Steinway ever produced. And Steinway actually has noticed this collection and calls it the finest private collection in the world. So it's really cool. And the good thing about this museum is it's always adding new pieces to already amazing collections. So you can go back one time and see everything and then go back another time and there's like so many new things added. And so it's just one of those you kind of want to go back a couple times. And you can visit the museum 7 days a week, and admission is $20 a person with discounts given to certain groups. The museum is located in Tallahassee right off I-10 at exit 209A. It's not far from the heart of Tallahassee. So if you're a car lover or history lover, this is probably a museum that you definitely want to check out. And it does sit, like I said, a little bit further away from Tallahassee, but it's definitely one of those you want to stop and you want to visit. And it's got some really, it's on a really pretty property. There's a lot of areas to like picnic and stuff. It's really cool. It's just a really interesting museum that I can't recommend enough. The next museum I want to talk about is the Dali Museum in St. Pete. This museum actually opened in 1982 and is home to a collection of Salvador Dali's works. The museum works to preserve a large collection of his works, keep his legacy alive, and introduce people to art. Not just his art, but all kinds of art. And the goal of the museum is to celebrate Salvador Dali's life and features artworks from his entire career. The collection is actually over 2,400 pieces that include every medium Dali ever used in his career, as well as manuscripts and documents. Now, the Moors became enthralled with Dali's work in 1943, and they began to collect it. They even ended up meeting him in New York and became really good friends with Salvador Dali. And the Moors would eventually go on to donate their entire collection. And after some rallying by the city of St. Pete, they wanted to bring the collection to Florida. They wanted it to be in Florida. They thought it was a perfect place to show it off. And it did. And that is the Dali Museum was born. And, of course, the collection got there in 1982. And the museum showed it off, and it grew and continued. And so it got a new home. The museum itself actually moved to a new building, and it's the one we're used to seeing to today. It's a really, really cool building with some interesting architecture and some really, really pretty, because it sits right on the water. It's just a gorgeous location in St. Pete. And since it grew, it actually can host other collections as well as exhibits and events. The Dali Museum also just did get approved. They had to vote on it this last election, so like 2 days ago, to be able to expand the museum. So that's going to be even cooler. They're going to actually expand it, and who knows what we're going to see in there now. But the museum hosts different exhibits that allow you to see different artists. They're currently hosting an exhibit, I don't know if it's still on exhibit, but it was called The Surrealism by the work of Yamandu Canosa. They also have a Paul Ehlers, Poetry, Politics, and Love on exhibit. Paul was known as the Poet of Freedom. That also helped to found Surrealism. And of course, they have tons of Dali's artwork. You can just get lost looking at his artwork alone. He is such an interesting artist. I definitely recommend walking around. If you're not going just for the art, maybe go and look at the building. The building itself is so cool. And of course, you're right there. You're basically on the water. It's a gorgeous, you can see the pier. You can see downtown. I love the Dali Museum and where it sits. And you can visit the museum from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. until 8 on Thursdays. They're open late on Thursdays. You can buy time tickets or even tickets up to 60 days before you visit. Sometimes they're cheaper if you buy them online. A ticket does cost $29 with discounts for certain groups, but they run specials, especially on Thursday after 5. You get a discount. You can go later in the afternoon and stay 5 to 8. And the museum does also offer memberships. Like I said, this is definitely one of those you want to go and visit in the St. Pete area. I do know from experience that it does rain in the afternoons, and this is that perfect pit stop for when it's raining. Walk around, enjoy some artwork, take in the sights. I can't recommend it enough. Now, the next museum I didn't really think of it as a museum, but it kind of is a museum. I don't know why I was like, that's not a museum. But it is. It is the Kennedy Space Center. The center is the visitor center, actually, for the NASA's Kennedy Space Center on Merritt Island. And the visitor center actually started in 1963 when NASA Administrator James Webb established self-guided tours where people could drive a predetermined route through the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Okay, side note. I don't know if this is one of those that's now the space base, but every time we would drive to Cocoa and we would pass the space base or the Space Force, I just kept thinking of Buzz Lightyear. I'm sorry. But anyways, sorry. It was established in 1963 and people could drive a self-guided tour through a route through the Air Force Station. And there was a small trailer that contained some small exhibits as kind of an introduction into the space programs. And boy, did people like this. People loved this. Popularity grew so much that they were just flocking to the self-guided tour, and they realized that they had to do more. They had to somehow give people more. They were interested. This is something that, that people could get behind, because it still is really cool, to think about space and what's out there or not out there or could be out there. So people got behind it. They really wanted more. So NASA decided that in 1965, they were going to spend $2 million on a full-scale visitor center that actually covers 42 acres. I didn't realize it was that big until I started doing the research to talk about this. And I'm like, oh my God. But they opened this massive acreage of just nothing but everything space, and popularity grew. It grew so much. Actually, it was consistently voted one of the top museums in Florida. And the cool thing about this complex is that it's set up in mission zones. And attractions and tours are grouped by chronological era. So you start at the beginning of space exploration and you go all the way to the current missions that are even going on to this day. Side note, they did obviously push back Artemis, the launch, because of Nicole. So keep an eye on it. I think they pushed it back to next week. But you can definitely check out NASA to see when the next thing is, because it's really cool, especially if you're on that side of Florida. You can literally just walk out, look up, and there's the launch. It was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen. All right, anyways. So the exhibits include heroes and legends that celebrate the early pioneers of NASA's space programs. And then the visitor center is also really cool because it has a bus tour. And the bus tour is included in admission, and it gets access to historic launch sites and operational space flight facilities. So you can actually see people working on their daily stuff sometimes. And you can even take in-depth tours or behind-the-scenes tours called the KSC Explore Tour. And that makes several stops, and you can see these places up close. You can get really cool pictures, and you can really get an in-depth idea of what they're doing at these facilities. It sounds like I've not been on that tour, but it sounds like one that I definitely don't want to miss out on in the future. Just because it would be nice to really see where history was made. And of course, the visitor center contains memorabilia from NASA's space explorations, like the actual space shuttle Atlantis, the Saturn V moon rocket, and it really gives an in-depth about the Hubble telescope and all the, the gorgeous images that it would send back. And the visitor center really shows off every aspect of space exploration that NASA has achieved, as well as give you an in-depth look at what could possibly be next. They go into detail about the things that, could happen. And that's really cool. I know that there's a lot of, new things happening in the past, I would say even 20 years with NASA, beyond what we've already experienced. So that's really cool. The center is open 9 a.m. to 5 or 6, depending on the time of the year. It's open later in the summer. And that is open every day except for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Tickets do run around $75 with discounts given to certain groups and specials they have going on, but it's definitely worth that amount. It's so cool. There's so much history and things to see and do in the complex that I think it's one of the coolest things to do in Florida outside of, the beaches and theme parks. The center does have a gift shop, a few places to eat, and even offers a kennel for visitors to secure their pets while they're in the center. So they really want you to be able to come and enjoy yourself and spend the whole day and really get involved in what's going on in NASA and really see where we started and where we're going. I think that the center is definitely a must for any space lover. It is obviously on the East Coast, so the next time you're driving down 95, just make a pit stop. It's a long way from Jacksonville to Miami. All right, guys. The next museum I'm going to talk about is the Florida Museum of Natural History. And this museum is awesome. It's in Gainesville. And it's actually, the museum is actually Florida's official state-sponsored and chartered natural history museum. It's really cool. They have some really awesome exhibits. The museum has been around for over 100 years, well established, and has, really taken a look at not only Florida, but just, natural history, and really gotten to look at, what made Florida, Florida, and what used to live here, and who used to live here, and where Florida could be in the next, 100 years. But they do house some really cool collections, and these collections were actually first used as a teaching tool at Florida Agricultural College in Lake City in the 1800s, before being relocated to the University of Florida in 1906. And the museum was chartered as the state's official natural history museum by the Florida legislature in 1917. And the museum is huge, so it's not like just one museum. It's actually like several facilities in Gainesville that house parts of this one museum. It's really cool. And of course, they have several exhibits that are always on display at the museum. And this is kind of one of those outdoor museums I was talking about. The butterfly rainforest is one of the most popular, and it's probably one of the coolest. The exhibit is a living exhibit with hundreds of free-flying butterflies and birds from all over the world, as well as fish and turtles that you can go and just explore. The exhibit is a lush landscape that has tropical trees, colorful flowering plants, and even a waterfall around the walking path. So you can basically just walk amongst the butterflies. And there's even a live webcam, so you can actually see the people enjoying the butterflies, and you can see the butterflies or animals from your own home. So if you can't go, you can always just be like, I think I want to look at this, and you can tune in on the webcam. And it's kind of cool. It is like a living outdoor museum. The exhibit is $14 with discounts for certain groups. That is really the only exhibit that does cost money with the museum. But it's well worth the $14. Now, of course, the museum houses large collections of fossils that show off different species and time periods. And this exhibit is free to the public. The museum shows off their own latest fossil research and even fossils from Levy County right there in Florida. The collection is extensive and definitely shows the evolution of life and land as the earth ages, especially there in Florida. Northwest Florida Waterways and Wildlife is another exhibit that follows the path of water as it flows through the Florida habitats, such as the limestone caves, the springs, and eventually goes out into the Gulf of Mexico. The exhibit features realistic hammock forests, what a cave would look like in Northwest Florida, rivers, and even the barrier islands. Kind of shows you the makeup and complex of, Northwest Florida. The museum also does exhibits in South Florida estuaries and shows how the ecosystem works, as well as supported the people of South Florida, including the Calusa tribe, who at one time controlled pretty much all of South Florida. And then the exhibit in South Florida goes on to show off the mangroves, which are very vital to, honestly, Florida. The mangroves are kind of what keeps Florida from to have land, and it kind of creates a natural barrier when the hurricanes come and the waves. So mangroves are very important. So it's kind of cool that it talks about them. It also shows an underwater scene to discover what lives in the estuaries that run through South Florida, the fishing heritage in the area, and it also has a large gallery of objects from the Native Americans who used to call Florida home. Now, the museum also has exhibits exploring our world that showcases University of Florida's STEM fields as it celebrates the history of the museum. The exhibit includes stories about research projects, ones that are going on, ones that have happened, how they have obtained the collections, and any new discoveries that they have made. So it's kind of cool to keep you updated on, what they're doing and what progress they have made. I also think it's cool because it gets people interested in what's going on in their world. Now, the museum does have limited time exhibits that showcase different things. Right now, Science Up Close, Fantastic Fossils, Inner Beauty, and then Mosquitoes, a Friend or Foe. Those are the ones that are there right now. And of course, check back. They do change their exhibits to newer, exciting things. Definitely want to check them out. They also have a really cool area outside the museum, the main museum. And it's just as interesting as the inside. And it's kind of another one of those little outdoor museums. And they actually have a fossil plant garden that showcases modern plants and fossils of those who lived years ago. The garden showcases a fossil of a cypress tree from Gadsden County, Florida, that was 8 tons and millions of years old. The garden also shows plants that have been around for millions of years, such as mosses, sago palms, and ginkgo trees. The museum also has a Florida wildflower garden path that allows you to see wildflowers and butterflies and insects do their little thing up close. So it's kind of cool. It also helps to further the pollination of the plants around the area. Now, the museum is open from 10 to 5, Monday through Saturday, and 1 to 5 on Sunday. General admission, like I said, is free, except for specialty exhibits and the rainforest. The butterfly rainforest. I don't know why I just want to call it a rainforest. It's humid enough. I highly encourage people to visit the wealth of knowledge and science, not only to learn about Florida, but about the rest of the world we live in, both in the past and the present. The museum also has a yearly plant sale, which is cool because they sell more than 100 species of Florida and pollinator-friendly plants. They do actually sell plants in their collector shop that you can plant in your yard, and it will encourage butterflies to come. So save the butterflies and the honeybees and plant some flowers in your garden. The museum is fun. It is mostly free, except for those couple exhibits, and it really does have something for everyone. It's definitely one of those Florida afternoon rain showers, or even just making a day of it. You've been to the beach, you don't want to get sunburned again. Definitely go check out these museums. And Florida is full of so many more museums that I didn't talk about that range from art, history, science, and even random topics. Museums are a great way to have fun while learning something new, especially on a hot summer day or just to pass the time when the rain showers hit. I recommend visiting them and learn something new, or pick up a fun souvenir, or even find a new hobby as you explore Florida. You'll run into a lot of interesting exhibits and people in the museum, but you know who you likely won't run into? Florida man! Museums just does not seem like their thing. So today's Florida man is from 2017 out of Key Largo. A naked drunk man wanted to know if his .45 caliber gun still worked. So what did he do? He shot it. He just shot it. He wanted to shoot it. He was naked. He was intoxicated. And he shot his gun. That's it. He fired it in the air. And police showed up to find out what was going on. And he told deputies that he was cleaning it and wanted to see if it still worked. Apparently it did. He was charged with unlawful discharge of a weapon and firing a weapon under the influence. So remember, what goes up must come down. And I'm glad that nobody was hurt, because he wanted to make sure that his gun still worked. Also kind of glad he didn't point it at himself. I hope that you all have enjoyed this episode. I, for one, love museums, and I'm happy to share them with you. And like I said, there are so many museums, so there'll probably be a part 2. Let me know if you have been to any fun museums in Florida, or any you want me to talk about. I know there's so many, and I'll never talk about them all, but I thought that this was a good place to start. I hope you guys are safe from Nicole. I hope that, I'm glad hurricane season's pretty much over with. So I hope that we can all put this year behind us and have a great hurricane season next season with none. Wishful thinking, I know, but maybe. All right, guys, I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Remember, 2 more weeks till Turkey Day. Be nice, guys. Stay hydrated. And as always, that's your daily dose of sunshine.